tale as old as time itself is inside of Xenoverse and Xenoverse 2, evasive skills have always costed 3 stamina bars, 300 stamina to be precise. It was done like this to make it so it's not as easy to get a free get out of jail free card in a combo. However, in an update during Xenoverse 2's life cycle, Dimps actually decided to change a handful of the evasive skills inside of Xenoverse 2 to be 200 stamina instead of 300 stamina. For some reason though, they only did this for a handful of the evasive skills. They did not do it for the entirety of the roster of evasive skills. For example, Spirit Explosion used to be 300 stamina, but in this very strange update they changed to 200 stamina. But a skill like Explosive Wave, which was also 300 stamina, is still 300 stamina. The problem with Dimps changing the evasive skill numbers from 300 to 200 isn't innately a bad thing. The bad part about the update that Dimps did was they only changed a handful of the evasive. What this means is some cast characters now are actually way worse than other cast characters and even the CAC, of course. For example, Turles is a character with Break Strike as an evasive skill, while someone like Goku or Blue Goku has Spirit Explosion. So technically, why would you play as Turles when you could play as Blue Goku or your CAC in a PvP game when all the evasives cost 300 stamina for Turles and 200 for other characters? You're playing with a handicap and putting yourself at a huge disadvantage just to be able to play the character you want, and for me, I don't like that mentality at all. So in my new gameplay enhancer update, the 6.0 update, today I will be introducing a new update that I am changing every single evasive skill in the game to be 200 stamina instead of 300 stamina. This includes Break Strike, Turn Retreat, Spread Shot Retreat, every evasive you can think of barring Science Vanish, Warp, and all the boss evasive skills. All those evasives will now cost 200 stamina instead of 300. My goal here is that I hope more people will actually be picking cast characters over their CAC, because a CAC can always have a 2-bar evasive skill, while some cast characters are locked to only having 3 bars, so hopefully this change will allow you guys to have more fun playing as cast characters. However, it should be noted, while all the cast characters now have 2-bar evasive skills, I decided to give MUI Goku's Instant Rise, he has his own Instant Rise that no other character has. MUI Goku's Instant Rise is actually 1.5 stamina bars instead of 2 stamina bars like the rest of the evasives. MUI is a character notorious for having bad stamina and being more of a high skill character, so hopefully this change to giving MUI Goku a 1.5 stamina bar evasive will allow him to be a force to be reckoned with inside of hard content and PvP with your friends. Now that the evasives are covered, I will be going over actually, as I've stated, every update brings in 2 character exclusive Super Souls, and I will be going over those character exclusive Super Souls in just a second. However, I would like to quickly say that being able to memorize these characters' kits is actually going to be a lot more difficult now because there's a actual handful of these Super Souls in. So my gameplay enhancer document, which was created with 4.0, was completely renovated by me during this update, allowing it so you can actually search these characters' kits on this document now, as Dimps graciously provided us a way to check these kits in-game. Just kidding, you can't check them in-game, because there's no way to view Super Souls on the character select screen. So if you guys are ever lost on which Super Soul does what, you can now swap over to this tab in the gameplay enhancer document to view what these character exclusive Super Souls do. I understand you need to tab out and constantly switch between monitors to see what you want to do, switch windows and everything like that. However, hopefully this will at least make memorizing character kits a lot easier. But without any further ado, let's get right into the character exclusive Super Souls. And the first character to be getting their Super Soul is actually Bardock from Dragon Ball Z, his 3rd costume specifically, in which he revolted against Frieza in space. Yes, this Bardock is now getting his character exclusive Super Soul, and let's get into the details right now. Bardock's character exclusive Super Soul is of course on his destroyed armor costume, it's costume 3. His Super Soul is called a Lonely Battle, and at the start of the match, it applies the following effects to self. So Bardock, kind of like Majin Vegeta, actually gets 20% his base max health, allowing him to tank a lot more in quests. Bardock actually has a solid health stat, but I wanted to once again improve his tanking capabilities here by giving him a bit more health. His second effect though, on the contrary, increases his base max ki by 40%. This is 4 ki bars, by the way. Bardock has a really sad amount of ki, so I wanted to massively increase that, especially because Bardock is kind of a ranged fighter. His third effect is actually his base ki super damage plus 25%. This increases all his blast damage from his super attacks by 25%. This does not count ki blasts or melee, only his ki blast supers. His fourth effect is he gets 10% damage reduction, a permanent buff, to allow him to tank a bit more with his extra health, hopefully. His fifth effect is effects gained when boosting allies plus 30%. So if you're not aware, when you go down and you lock onto an ally when you're down and press the B button, or whatever it is on keyboard, you will actually be boosting your allies. However, the effect is so minuscule in the game that it makes me wonder why the effect exists. For example, Namekians can get healing, Saiyans can get attack, but the buff is so minuscule, I believe it's like 1%, that there's just no reason to use it. So I will be actually buffing that effect Bardock gains when boosting allies by 30% when Bardock's down, so you can actually support your team and have it do something, hopefully. Battle Z had sort of a similar mechanic like this by giving your allies ki, and I kind of wanted to also make it a bit like that, as the game really doesn't utilize co-op mechanics that well, other than dual ultimates, I guess, but hopefully this will help Bardock be a bit better as a support character in quests if he goes down. However, after the stat buffs, we will now get into his actual new abilities, and his 6th effect is applies the following effects to self for every time this character KOs an enemy, activates 5 times a permanent buff. The first part of this effect is he gets 15% damage up to 75% damage per enemy KO'd, he gets 3% damage reduction up to 15% per enemy KO'd, and he gets 5% stamina recovery up to 25% per enemy KO'd. My line of thinking here is Bardock absolutely massacres a bunch of Frieza soldiers, and him destroying all those Frieza soldiers gets him stronger, so he's ready to take on Frieza, hopefully. Bardock will be going into quests and absolutely shredding through opponents, and the quests that have multiple enemies in them, or endurance type of quests like Boo Boo Machin Chaos, Bardock will just shred through those quests like a knife through butter. Not only does he do that when he KOs an enemy, but something that kind of synchronizes well with it is his 7th effect, which is when his own health falls below 25%, he inflicts the entire enemy team with the following effect, no limit. Melee and Ki Blast damage receive plus 31%, and Strike and Ki Super damage receive plus 18%. What this means is when Bardock's health is low, he will actually inflict the entire enemy team with a debuff for damage received, and combining that with his inflicted damage, he will mow through enemies like crazy. And considering how Bardock has Riot Javelin, which also gets a buff under 25% health, you can see where I'm going with this. So hopefully Bardock will now be an amazing character to pick inside of parallel quests. Before we move on to the other character, let's quickly go over his PvP Super Soul. It's the same exact thing, however, but his effect 6, instead of activating when he KOs an enemy, the 6th effect for his PvP Soul is when the Riot Javelin is used, the following effects apply to self during the length of the attack. He gets 300% stamina damage, Ki Super damage was 180%, and 30% damage reduction during the length of the attack. And then his 7th effect is the same exact thing, however, his numbers are lower. He only gets 13% to the enemy team for damage received for melee and Ki Blast, and then Strike and Supers are 8%. So obviously the meta here is to get low on health and hit your enemy with a Riot Javelin. However, the charge will still count if you're knocked out of the attack, so make sure to use it carefully. Of course, that's not the only character I introduced, as we actually have a second character as well. And the next character is actually Z Broly. The second character I got as an idea from a comment I got on my Turles video, actually. I'm going to put it up on screen right now. Pretty much, Z Broly was another character. After this comment, I looked at him, and I feel like, yeah, he definitely could use a bit of a stat tune-up, along with some new abilities. So hopefully this Super Soul, nice commenter, is what you're looking for. So without any further ado, let's get into Broly's new Super Soul as well. So Z Broly gets a Super Soul now, and his first 2 variations, Super Villain Broly is excluded, but his first 2 costumes, meaning his base one and his festival one, all get these Super Souls. The Super Soul is called Playtime's Over, and at the start of the match applies the following effects to self. Broly gets 10% to his base max health. Broly has an insane health stat already, so I didn't want to go too crazy with this, but Broly getting some more health kind of fits in line with the show where he's like a tanky monster, so that's why I decided to give him a bit more health. Broly as well gets 50% to his base max stamina, 5 stamina bars, which is second effect, which is a permanent buff. Broly as well has not had very much stamina, but Broly in the show, of course, is going absolutely crazy, fighting a bunch of characters at once. So Broly having a ton of endurance, I wanted to give him as well. The third effect is his base stamina recovery goes up by 30%. Broly has a ton of stamina now, so giving him some extra stamina recovery will synergize well with that, I hope. The fourth effect is I gave Broly a 25% inflicted damage buff, a permanent buff. I did not want to just hand this one out to other characters, but Broly has really bad offensive stats. Every single Broly offense stat is the exact same, for some unexplainable reason, but it is. Every stat is the same, and it's not even a high number. Broly as well, in his 5th effect, actually gets a permanent 20% damage reduction, which will allow him to be a tanky monster inside of quests. And then his 6th effect is effects gained when boosting allies plus 30%, a permanent buff, just like Bardock. The 7th effect, though, of course, is where his main abilities start. When this character receives an attack, there's a 1% chance the following effects will occur to the targeted enemy for 18 seconds, activates 8 times. The first effect of effect 7 is he seals all enemy skills. What this means is when Broly is getting attacked, and there is a 1% chance this ability will activate, and seal the entire enemy's skill set for 18 seconds. This does not count scripts using moves, only their actual moves being used by the AI themselves. I know that doesn't sound very high, but let me just get through this effect really quickly. The second part of this effect is he gets a 20% damage debuff to the enemies, where they do 20% less damage during these 18 seconds, and they take 20% more damage as well. As you can see by the asterisks, it says skills like Kamehameha that deal multiple hits, all hits from the attack account as a separate hit. So if you get hit by Super Kamehameha and it's a 20 hit attack, you can do the math that each separate hit counts as the 1% chance. Broly is all pretty good for a 1v1 type of mission. Like if you're fighting one character, there's some vanilla peak used against one enemy to seal the enemy's skill sets if you're struggling. Some expert missions, this would be a really good tool to bring in. So hopefully Broly will see a bit more play. However, that's not it. His 8th effect as well is Broly's 8th effect is when this character receives an attack, there's a 2% chance the following effects will occur to self for 18 seconds. Activates 5 times. Marked by a green glow. The first effect of effect 8 is Broly gets a 50% increase to its max ki, that is 5 ki bars. The second effect of effect 8 is Broly gets a 30% stamina increase. That is a 3 stamina bar increase. The third effect of effect 8 is Broly will get 500% stamina and ki recovery. This is because when he's getting comboed and this effect activates, I want it so you can actually get out of the combo extremely fast. Playing well into this idea is the fourth effect of effect 8, which he gets a 75% speed increase during this 18-second duration. The reason this happens is so Broly, during this 18 seconds, is just pure chaos. Playing into that even more is his fifth effect of effect 8, which Broly receives a 125% inflicted damage buff during this 18-second window. This stacked on top of his base 25% inflicted damage from his base kit. And last but not least, the final effect of Broly's Super Soul in effect 8 is Broly will restore his health by 1% every second up to 18% during this 18-second window. Broly is an absolute menace inside a quest. He would just shred through everything with massive damage, massive tanking, massive ki recovery, massive speed, and everything. Something meta you could do, you can actually bring Bardock and Broly together, have Bardock get low on health, and have Broly get under 40%, and absolutely just decimate the entire enemy team. These two actually work pretty well together. That wasn't by choice, it was just by circumstance I figured out. But you can actually do some fun stuff like that. But Broly now will hopefully be a very fun option to bring into parallel quests. That's it for character exclusive Super Souls, but before we finish, let me go over his PvP Soul. The PvP Soul is the exact same. His effect 7, his stat buffs are the exact same. Effect 7 is the same, however, there's a 15% chance the effect activates to the target enemy for 10 seconds instead of 18 seconds, and it only activates once. He seals all enemy skills, and then instead of a 20% debuff, and he gets a 10% debuff to the enemy. And then when this character is struck by an ultimate attack in his effect 8, the following effects occur to self. He gets a 15% max ki buff, and then 10% inflicted damage buff, and 8% damage reduction buff, which are permanent buffs. When this character gets hit by an ultimate, it activates once. But that's it for character exclusive Super Souls, guys. I'm not entirely finished with this video yet. I have some extra stuff I want to show you, but hopefully these Super Souls will allow you to have a lot more fun with bringing some more cast characters instead of parallel quests. If you have any suggestions for character exclusive Super Souls, feel free to leave a comment. Before I go, I will leave you guys with some more update info and some other stuff I was working on since last time. I figured I threw this in there to pad some time out. Starting with a bit of a minor change, but something I definitely thought needed to be done. Super Saiyan Gogeta, from Dragon Ball Z specifically, has had his name changed from Gogeta Super Saiyan to Super Gogeta, to distinguish this Gogeta from the Dragon Ball Super Gogeta.